there. Is there a better place than downtown for this stadium? We've heard things like the old Chrysler plant in Fenton. He mentioned East St. Louis.
We're a huge region. There are plenty of places other than downtown to put a stadium. The idea that everything that happens in the region has to be downtown is kind of a false idea. We're lucky that the fact that in the 1960s, the St. Louis Symphony decided to be in Midtown rather than downtown, even though in the 60s it was very in vogue to be in a downtown location with a brand new building. They chose to renovate an old building in a place other than downtown. So we need to think about places other than besides downtown to put a stadium.
I'm surprised to hear you say that, because I know I hear you preach the importance of the urban core, no matter what any particular issue might be. But you're saying it could be okay in another spot. Are other people talking about this?
Well, before the Fenton plant, the Chrysler plant in Fenton was taken over, and now that's going to be developed. If anybody's ever tried to get to Six Flags during a summer day and driven on 44, you know what the traffic would be like. That's for 20,000 people. Can you imagine what it would be like for 70,000? The only other place that really has an intersection of two highways right now, there's a couple. If you could find land near the airport, and by the way, I don't think that the FAA would allow you to build at that intersection of 170 and 70, and the other one would be the Page Extension and 141. I don't know how much the land would be out there. I do know that Metrolink doesn't run out there, and many, many Rams fans show up to the games on Metrolink. If you build where they're talking about building, you've got the Laclede Station plus the Convention Center Metrolink stops, you've got all the access to downtown, and you've got the convergence of 3 different highways. I've been a Rams season ticket holder since 1995. One of the great things about our area, as opposed to Kansas City, and I know a lot of people love the idea of tailgating for 3 hours after a game, but it takes 3 hours to get out of that parking lot. You can get back home from a Rams game in an hour if you live in the county, and that includes dealing with all the traffic with garages. So I think from that standpoint, I haven't seen a better spot for ingress and egress.
And NFL teams, correct me if I'm wrong, they love, speaking of the tailgating, they love parking, right?
Yes.
Why is that? What's the business model behind all the parking?
Well, there's definitely plenty of parking in the model that we've seen from Mr. Peacock.
Which is a problem for a lot of people. We just heard the gentleman from Connecticut talking about the cost of the
Well, in St. Louis specifically, you know, there's plenty of people out in the suburbs, and the Metrolink doesn't go out to all the suburbs. So people are coming in, driving there, and they're going to need places to park, and yeah.
Well, think about the money. It's 10,000 spots at $30, $40, $50 a spot. That's an awful lot of money for 8 Sundays a year and 2 other days. And that's something that the Rams have. The Blues are the only team in the NHL that doesn't get parking money, and that's one of the reasons that they have the financial difficulties that they do. And obviously the Cardinals, when the DeWitt family bought the team, they sold the garages, but they've got the parking now at Ballpark Village. But that's a huge revenue generator for all sports teams.
And do the Rams want more parking than they have now? Obviously they want a whole new stadium.
They have nothing. The Rams don't get any parking revenue at all. There's that McGuire Moving and Storage lot just north of the Dome. There's the MAC lot across the street. They don't get any money from any parking at all. And they're one of the few teams. There might be 2 teams in the NFL that don't get parking revenue.
Steve, let's say that they do build a stadium where they're talking about building it. Is that good for the rest of downtown? It's not exactly in downtown. I know we've heard people on business owners on Washington Avenue say that just Ballpark Village has hurt Washington Avenue. Is this something that could actually be a benefit to downtown? Is it close enough, do you think?
It wouldn't help at all. The argument that people can leave quickly is exactly what would happen. Everyone would get in their cars and they would leave. There would be any benefit to downtown at all. And you couldn't walk to the stadium from the Metrolink anyway.
Sure you can. It's just across the street from Lumiere. I used to work on the Landing, and I rode Metrolink to go to work almost every day. And there would be no problem in walking right past Lumiere to this stadium.
I use a wheelchair. I've tried it. It doesn't work.
Okay.
We have a lot of work to do to make the connection.
Doesn't work for everyone.
Doesn't work for everyone, yes.
Let's go back to Stan Kroenke for just a second, since we've got the business reporter here at the table. This is definitely seems like an emotionless decision he's making. Fair assessment. Yeah. Is that something we need to do as well? Or are we kind of tied into this emotionally?
Well, for Stan, obviously the Rams in a new stadium in LA is a much more valuable asset than the Rams in a new stadium in St. Louis. I think it's probably close to $1 billion that we're talking about a difference here. In terms of what it would mean for Kroenke in St. Louis, I think what he wants to do is potentially make any situation for the Rams something like Patriot Place in New England, and its relationship with Gillette Stadium. It's Gillette Stadium, where the Patriots play, is essentially a field in the middle of a mall that is just a cash cow for the Kraft family. And I think that's what Kroenke ultimately wants to do.
Can he do that in the location he's talking about? Do you think where they have to build stuff to go with it? I mean, you don't make money once the car is parked in those parking lots.
Well, potentially down the road, I guess you could, but right now, as the model is, they would have to acquire more land, because right now it's just a stadium and a bunch of parking lots.
Is he playing both towns against each other? I got a former St. Louis Post-Dispatch reporter, Tim Logan, who now works for the LA Times. He was in town. He told me neither town thinks they're going to have this team.
My sense is that Stan Kroenke, and I said this in September, that the Rams have made a decision to move to Los Angeles. And the LA Times report last week that he had started negotiations 18 months ago and reached a handshake agreement last March to build this stadium in LA. I think that Stan wants to be in LA. I don't think that there's any playing of St. Louis here. I think that's one of the reasons that he hasn't said anything. I think he desperately wants to be in LA because of what Brian talked about. It could be a real financial windfall for him. And by the way, it's really hard in sports. It's different than other companies, I think, with sports, because we do get emotionally involved. When you buy a ticket, you buy because you want to be emotionally invested. But from a business standpoint, I'm not one of those at all costs keep the Rams people. I don't think we should at all costs. But I do think that there has to be a level of emotion because of what we talked about before, where we were 15 years ago right now. You want to keep that asset and hopefully relive what we had in 1999.
And I think that officials have come to grips with that. Obviously, they said they're looking to keep St. Louis an NFL city. They're not necessarily pointing to the Rams each and every time. Do they want to keep the Rams? Yes, but they also want to make St. Louis an NFL city.
Do you care if the Rams stay or go?
Makes no difference to me.
Do you think people that read your website care?
I've polled them, actually, and they don't seem to care.
So, and the people on my radio station, 100% of them want to keep the Rams. Yeah. So I guess it depends on what demographic you're talking about. And I know there was a poll done, I think, on, I don't know who did it, but 70% of people said they wouldn't want to pay the freight for an NFL franchise. I would venture to say that there's a huge percentage of people that don't want to pay any taxes at all, right?
Yeah.